Namaskar, I'm Harpreet Kaur and I welcome you all to our live and interactive online training session on digital wellness. Yes, this training session is organized by CIET, which is Central Institute of Educational Technology, NCERT, New Delhi. And you are watching us on eVidya channels from 6 to 12 and also on our YouTube channel NCERT Official. Now coming back to this particular training session that we are having right now, this is a 5-day, 5-hour training session. Each day, 1 hour is dedicated to a particular topic related to the umbrella theme of the training session. And this session is meant for all the viewers across different ages who want to know about digital wellness and its consequences, its impact on our lives and of course in environment as such. Now if you have any query regarding the particular topic, you can always reach out to us. We have our phone numbers for you, we have our email IDs as well. Today is day 4 of the training session, and as I've already mentioned, the umbrella theme, which is digital wellness. So today on day 4 we are going to talk about mental health concerns in digital spaces. We have already covered different topics in the previous 3 days, and I will elaborate on the same by the end of this particular session. But today we will focus completely on the mental health concerns. We know how digital spaces are having an impact on our life, both physically, mentally and emotionally as well. So there are good things also, there are bad things also. But how it is affecting overall, and is digital space good when it comes to mental health issues? We will talk more about it. We will have a presentation. We will have some interesting concepts coming in front of us. So we'll talk more about it in a while. But before that, let me tell you the ways through which you can reach out to us with your questions and queries. So the phone number that we have for you is 8800440559. That's our contact number. And if you wish to write an email to us, the email ID is training.helpdesk@ciet.nic.in. Since you are watching us live on our YouTube channel NCERT Official, you can always go to our comment section. You can type your question there and you can get connected to us instantly. So this is a session where your queries will be answered and your doubts will be sorted because it's live and interactive. And to have a discussion on today's topic, we have invited our expert in the studio. We are joined by Ms. Yashita Aruwalia. Welcome to the session, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
And ma'am is PhD clinical psychology scholar from AIIMS New Delhi, and she'll be throwing light on all the important concepts and so many questions that are probably there in our mind. So we are curious to know more about it. It's day 4 of the training session, mental health concerns and in digital spaces. So ma'am, first of all, I have this very simple and basic question. Because these days people are really aware about mental health issues, and when we talk about technology, digital spaces, today's Gen Z is more about internet, but it is impacting our life in some good ways, in some bad ways. So overall, just briefly tell us what is going to be the purpose of this session and what all we are going to cover in this particular training program.
Right. So first of all, I would like to start by thanking you all for inviting me to this session, to this platform. I am really glad to be a part of this training initiative on training individuals in digital wellness. And I think that this is something which is very important, especially for today's generation. As you have mentioned, today is the 4th day of this training program, and today's training is primarily going to be focused on the mental health concerns which are associated with engaging in digital spaces. And before we get into any of the concerns, I would like to clarify that not everybody who uses the digital space or not everybody who engages in internet sites will suffer or experience or be affected from any of these concerns. It depends on the time that you are engaging in these digital platforms. It depends on the interpretation that you're making out of the experiences that you're having on these platforms. It is how overall all of these factors are affecting your everyday capacity of functioning that is going to really be a factor.
Yes, right. So let's start the discussion and let's see how it's impacting us in all the ways possible.
All right. Okay. So we are basically going to be starting this discussion with a very primary aspect of the digital space, which is the social media. Social media platforms are basically spaces wherein we can meet new people, we can interact with them, we can share our pictures, we can share our experiences, and we can also just share our thoughts with everybody around us. There are hundreds of these social media platforms which are present all over the internet. The 6 most common of them are Instagram, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Snapchat, there's LinkedIn, and there's YouTube. But apart from these 6 common social media apps, there are hundreds of other apps which are present all over the internet. Now, it is these social media apps which actually allow us to communicate our experiences, but they can also be very detrimental to our mental health as well as our thinking. Coming to a very recent survey which was conducted in 2023, it was conducted in the United States, and it was conducted on adolescents and teenagers, and it let us know that there is an average of 4.8 hours that teenagers and adolescents spend every day on social media platforms. Approximately, there are 5.3% of the hours that females are spending every day on social media, whereas there are 4.4 hours that males are spending on these social media platforms. Now, I would actually like to begin this discussion on social media by asking you all a question for everybody who's watching, that for how long is it that when you start scrolling on your mobiles, how long do you keep continuing the scrolling process? And is it difficult for you to keep your phone down once you have picked it up? Because for a lot of people, it is very difficult for them to actually keep their phone down once they have picked it up, because the very design of these social media platforms, it's geared towards maximizing user engagement by presenting you with very personalized and very individual tailorized content streams. How do they do that? They actually do this through a back-end storage mechanism in place, wherein they store all the data that you have been scrolling through. So, for example, if there is a person called person A, and this person is very interested in food related videos, then for this particular person, if you see their social media feed, it is going to be full of food related videos of different places wherein they can explore more of this interest. However, if there at the same time there is a person B who is more interested in fashion related videos, you are going to see that their entire social media profiles are filled with those fashion related videos, because these platforms, they want to capture our attention and they don't want to let go of it. So when that happens, even when this tailored content is something that enhances user experience, it is also something that increases the addictive potential of these platforms. Now, one very important domain or aspect of our lives that social media can impact is our interpersonal relationships. With the amount of time that we spend every day in the digital world while engaging with everybody virtually, we have very less time which is left for ourselves to actually have face-to-face interactions with people around us, with our friends and with our family, and this has led to fragmentation which has come in our communities, which is responsible for a lot of feelings of social isolation and alienation among people. This is also something which is associated with a lot of loneliness which is associated in the teenagers and in adolescents around us, and especially this is something which has been impacting one population area in general, which is the children of our today's generation, because they are much more exposed to this technology than the previous generations ever were. So it is the communication that we have in our daily lives, which is something which is responsible for actually inculcating all of the social skills within us. It is something which is important for us to understand emotional intelligence. It is something which is important for us to be able to comprehend the emotions of our own self and the emotions of other people, and at the same time be empathetic towards them. And these social skills can be very, very handy in order to resolve interpersonal conflicts that come with other people. Another thing that we don't really realize a lot of the times is that everything that is shown on social media is not always true, or is not always the actual reflection of somebody's real life. For example, if you see in this slide and you focus on the first picture, we can see that there is a person who has posted a very happy picture on their social media profiles, but in real, if you look at their lives, they don't seem that okay. In the second picture, you can see that there are 3 people who are actually posing and they're smiling and they're winking and they're happy, but in their actual picture, they are actually not spending time with each other at all. They are actually engaged in their mobile phones, and this is something which is not at all visible on their social medias. In the third picture, you can see that there is this person who is not really on a vacation, but she is trying to pose as if she is using a wallpaper which is not real. In the fourth profile, we can see a very common trend which was there for a very long amount of time, which is the "this is how I woke up," whereas it's not really true in real life, because this is not how glamorous we are when we wake up. But when we don't realize this, that not everything that is reflected on social medias is the actual representation of what is really happening in our lives, we start comparing ourselves with other people. We start seeing the pictures of other people and we start thinking that, am I doing enough? Am I doing okay? Am I good enough? And all of these doubts and all of these questions that come up to us because of that, they can lead to a lot of feelings of inadequacies among us. We can start questioning, we can start doubting our own existence. We can start being jealous and envious of the lives of other people, and we may start thinking that it would have been so much better in case I would have had this person's life rather than my own. This can lead to very minute or massive alterations in the self-perception and in the self-image of these individuals, because they can start thinking that this is not who I really want to be. I want to be this other person who is living this much more wonderful life that they are displaying on their social medias. And this can lead to a reduced self-confidence and self-worth, because we don't really realize our actual worth. We start having this doubt within ourselves, which actually leads us to loving ourselves a little bit less.
Low self-esteem.
This entire phenomenon is something that leads to this term called digital perfectionism, which is characterized by users feeling compelled to maintain an idealized online persona. That there are certain parts of my life that I am going to want to portray in front of the entire world, and I am going to hide the rest of my personalities behind the image. Now, when this happens, there is a whole loop that we tend to get into. For example, in the first picture, you will see that we are going to see other people who are posting really wonderful parts of their lives, and that is going to convert into us questioning our own lives in the second picture, and we are going to start comparing ourselves to these people. Eventually, this is going to lead into a lot of doubts, a lot of self-doubts and a lot of self-questioning, which is eventually going to turn into us doing the same action and following the same pathway, wherein we also start pretending to be this person who is doing really good in their lives and only portraying certain specific parts of our lives online. Now, e-personality is a term which is an exaggerated form of digital perfectionism, and this is something that happens when we create an online self which is very different in certain personality characteristics to our offline selves. So if you meet this person in their real lives, you are probably going to be very confused, because they won't seem like this person that they were portraying to be online. And this basically involves the rise or the emergence of certain online personality traits in users which are not present in their offline selves, and this entire phenomenon is characterized by selective self-presentation and idealized identities. So for example, if there is a person A who is very obsessed with this person, which is, let's name them the person B, and they really like everything that they do on their social medias, and since they are so enticed by everything that person B is doing, person A might try to actually come up with an image of their own selves in which they start representing everything else that person B has been representing. There is another feature that is very popularly being observed these days all throughout these social media platforms, which is the online disinhibition effect. Now, this phenomenon is characterized by the extensive amounts of trolling and bullying which is happening on the internet these days, and it mainly happens, or it has increased to this huge extent, because internet is linked with two features which involve anonymity and invisibility. So when we can make profiles with no names and we can make profiles with no profile pictures, we know that at this point of time it will be very easy for us to give out a lot of opinions and say a lot of things which will not be possible in the real life, right? So this leads to a lot of trolling or a lot of bullying in the social media systems, which can be very detrimental to the mental health of those people who are on the receiving end of this behavior. Then there is the concept of fear of missing out, which is something which is very popularly known as FOMO in popular culture, and it is something that a lot of us go through every day. So it is this constant urge to keep checking our mobile phones to see if there is a certain experience that we are missing out on, in case there is a certain event that we need to go to, in case there is a certain text that we have received from some other person that we need to check out, in case there is a certain vacation that we also need to take. So this fear, this intense fear of missing out on these experiences that other people have been enjoying, it makes us anxious, and due to this anxiety we keep checking our phones again and again to see in case there is something that we need to attend to. However, research has consistently shown time and again that this action to relieve our anxieties, that is picking up the phone, is something that also leads to even more anxiety. It leads to an intensifying loop, because whenever we check the phone, there is definitely always something that is going to be something that we are missing out on. So once we realize that, it intensifies the anxiety. So this constant loop that we sometimes get stuck into, that the only action which is able to relieve our anxieties, which is checking our phones, is something which is leading to even more anxiety in ourselves. This loop is something which is very difficult to come out of. Nextly, there is the phenomenon of social media fatigue, which is very parallel in its mechanisms to these burnouts that we have due to our workplace pressure or due to our family pressures. So what happens is that when we consume an extreme amount of social media content, when we consume a huge amount of information which is being presented online, sometimes it can get very burdensome on us. Sometimes it can actually overload our entire cognitive systems, because it might be too much to absorb, right? So when that happens, we start having these periods of time wherein we want to completely disengage from our social media platforms and not really be witness to anybody else's experiences. This experience is also associated with certain physical symptoms like headaches, like tiredness, fatigue, not being able to sleep, and also certain psychological symptoms like decreased life satisfaction, extreme feelings of overwhelm and anxiety. Nextly, there is the internet addiction disorder, which is something which parallels the neural mechanisms which are often observed in substance addiction. For example, if there is a person who is very engaged with using the internet, if sometimes they take the internet away from themselves and they don't engage in it for a lengthened period of time, they can actually start experiencing withdrawal symptoms like anxiety, irritability and depressive symptoms. And also, even when they are constantly using the internet, their amount of internet usage has to decrease or has to increase little by little for them to be able to receive the same amount of satisfaction from it. So maybe we start from 1 hour of scrolling every day. It can lead to 5 hours of scrolling every day without the person even getting to know that where is the severity coming from. But it's actually a symptom which is associated with addiction in itself, because what is addiction if it's very simply stated? It is not being able to stop ourselves from doing something. It is wanting to uncontrollably engage in an action again and again, no matter the consequences of this particular action. Nextly, social media addiction is actually a sub-feature of this entire domain of internet addiction, in which this particular part is actually very specific to social media use. So for example, there are some people who have been going or who have been having an uncontrollable urge to keep logging into their social media or to keep checking into their accounts to see what is happening. These people are also overly concerned with their social media usage or everything that is happening in their social media accounts to all of the other people that they have been following. Research also states that there are approximately 12% of social media users who actually experience this in the form of an addiction. Nextly, there are gaming disorders. So gaming disorders in general do represent an area which can develop into an addiction a lot of the times. However, these games in particular, specifically the massively multiplayer online role-playing games, these are actually a combination of role-playing video games which are multiplayer in nature, and these require the internet to be downloaded and they require the internet to be played. So basically they won't exist in case there wasn't an internet connection, which is why we actually classify them as an internet related problem. So a lot of the times there are some adolescents, there are some teenagers or some users who are not able to stop playing this game even if it starts hindering their everyday life functioning, even if it starts interfering their occupational life or their interpersonal life, and that is when they must seek help from a professional. Plus, it has also been reported that gaming is one of the most frequently reported activities by people who are seeking help for internet related pathologies. Nextly, there is the concept of cyberbullying. Now, bullying is something, even in general life, we know that a lot of it goes on in schools. We know that it is when there is an individual or a group of individuals who are trying to be hostile or aggressive to another individual or another group of individuals. When this entire process is replicated through the use of the internet by using electronic or digital tools, it is something that we call cyberbullying. So cyberbullying is associated with behavioral problems in all of the three groups. The first one being perpetrators of the cyberbullying behavior, the second one being victims of the cyberbullying behavior, and the third one being a group called bully victims. So bully victims are basically people who had earlier endured bullying and are now using that frustration to bully other people as well. So it's basically a mechanism which has shifted. All of these three groups of people must consult with a professional in case they have been exhibiting all of these behaviors which are related to cyberbullying. Plus, cyberbullying is something which is also linked with two psychiatric features, namely suicidal thinking and depressive symptoms, and it is very important for people to seek help in case they have been going through something like that. Nextly, there is the online gambling disorder. So online gambling activities in themselves are not unique, right? They are the same activities, they are just engaged in through the medium of the internet. For example, if we are talking about traditional gambling, we have a lot of games like we have rummy, we have these slot machines that we engage into, we have lottery, we have casinos that we can visit, and similarly there are a lot of apps which are now being built all over the web which are often named as online rummy, online teen patti, online casinos, online slot machines and online lottery apps which people can use from the comfort of their homes or even when they are traveling for any uninterrupted periods at any time of the day. So it has been reported by at least 15% of the gamblers that online gambling is more addictive than traditional forms of gambling because it's more accessible and it's more easily accessible, and it also has greater confidentiality. So for example, in case I was this person who was going to a gambling house, then there would be a lot of people who would be able to identify me, right, that I was actually engaging in that activity. However, when we use these online apps, it becomes very easy for us to hide our identities while we are engaging in that behavior, which is why there are people who earlier used to engage in traditional forms of gambling or telephonic gambling which are now transitioning to online modes of gambling because it's more accessible and more confidential. Coming to the next phenomenon, we have online shopping addiction. Online shopping addiction has only become possible in today's world because there are a lot of shopping platforms like Myntra, there's Ajio, there's Flipkart, there's Amazon, which are so reachable to the entire public. Online shopping is something which is characterized by an inability to control the impulse to make these online purchases, to keep making these purchases even when it is impacting the financial, interpersonal, emotional or physical well-being of an individual. This feature is also something which has really come into being because of the very easy features which are associated with all of these applications. For example, there is the feature of easy returns and refunds. There is the feature of wish list and notifications which keep reminding you to go back to buying the things that you have put into your cart or you've put into your wish list, which is something that does not let you get away from this intense impulse to keep buying things. Then there is the digital hoarding behavior. So hoarding behavior in general refers to accumulating a huge amount of items or a huge amount of things that may or may not necessarily be required or may or may not necessarily be used later in life, but it is something that is accumulated over time and can lead to a lot of clutter and a lot of disorganization. When it is talked about in the digital sense, it converts into accumulating digital possessions. For example, people start accumulating a lot of files, folders, photos, videos, emails, applications as well, and it leads to a lot of clutter and disorganization in their entire digital space, which can be very, very hazardous for their occupational lives because it might become very difficult to manage things later on. This behavior is also linked with cognitive overload. It is also linked with anxiety, overwhelm, and decreased attention span, along with a difficulty in concentrating because everything is so messy and cluttered. Then there is digital distraction. This is honestly something that I feel almost all of us must have experienced at least once in our lives. If we have access to the internet or if we have access to any form of digital device. So it is basically when I have a lot of tasks lined up in front of me, but I stop engaging in any of these tasks and I divert my attention to my phone, which has been kept here. So rather than attending to all of my real life tasks or all of my real life interactions, I start engaging in my mobile phone, I start scrolling on it, which is something which can interrupt our entire occupational work. It can interrupt our interpersonal interactions as well, and overall it can lead to a lot of stress and a lot of tension because of decreases in productivity and a lot of impending work that might arise due to it, and this might eventually contribute to decreased overall well-being. Nextly, there is the concept of technostress. Now, technostress is actually a new term, I feel, but it has been experienced by a lot of people, especially during COVID. So what happened during COVID? Let's take an example. Let's take the example of teachers. So for example, there were a lot of teachers who had to continue teaching, but they had to learn the means of teaching through the use of digital devices and through the use of internet. So they had to understand all of these platforms like Google Meet and Microsoft Teams and Zoom, which was something which was difficult for them because they never really had to comprehend any form of internet mediums before this. But when COVID hit, they were actually pressurized to the extent that they could not really ignore learning these platforms, and this is the kind of pressure that can lead to a lot of physiological symptoms again and a lot of psychological symptoms, because this is not something that you want to learn, but you have to be able to adjust with today's world. Nextly, there is the paradox of connectivity. So the paradox of connectivity basically states that even when all of these digital mediums are so appreciated so very commonly because of their ever-present nature, because of their increased forms of connectivity, this is something that can also be very hindering to our mental health and to our physical health. For example, if there was a person, let's say 50 years back, and they had just worked from 9 to 5 in their office and then they came home around 6 p.m. After that, it would be their time to just relax and have a personal life. However, in the present day mechanisms, we know that since this employee is so reachable even after leaving their workspace, we usually send them a text message or we usually send them an email even after work hours, because we know that this is accessible, that is possible. But even if the employee is not really attending to that email in that point, it is something that does get processed in their minds, which basically does interpret their personal life, and this can lead to a lot of straining of their personal and professional boundaries, which can eventually result in a decreased life satisfaction. Nextly, there are depressive symptoms that can come up as a source of internet use. But there is not just one factor of the internet which is leading to all of these mechanisms. There are a lot of factors which can actually be contributing to this phenomenon. For example, like we discussed in the first couple of slides, internet can actually lead to a lot of loneliness and a sense of isolation in individuals, because even when we are continuously connected with so many other people, it becomes very difficult to actually feel that connection because we are not really spending any form of quality time with them. So even with so much connectivity present all around us, it is very easy for us to feel lonely, it is very easy for us to feel like there is no one else to support us, and that can lead to a lot of lowness in mood and other depressive symptoms. Coming to the third pointer, there is cyberbullying and cyber stalking behavior, which can be very difficult to cope through for the person on the receiving end of these behaviors. Because it is so difficult to identify people on the internet because of the whole concept of anonymity and invisibility, this is something that can become really difficult for another person to actually cope with, because they don't know how to handle this situation. Nextly, there is the social media comparison that we discussed earlier. When it becomes too excessive, when we start living too much in our minds, when we start overthinking a lot about everything that we lack and everything that the other person has, it can become very depressing for us. It can lead to a lot of low mood. It can lead to a lot of feelings of inadequacy. Then lastly, there is the addiction and the withdrawal which is associated with internet use. So a lot of the times when we realize that we are actually developing an addiction towards internet use, it can be a very scary feeling, because we realize that it is going to be difficult to come out of it, and this can lead to a lot of sadness inside people. Plus, even when they try to get rid of this internet addiction, the entire withdrawal process which is associated with letting it go includes a sub-factor of depressive symptoms within itself. And so going through it is something which is linked with depressive factors, but also leaving it is also something which is linked with depressive factors. Coming to anxiety symptoms which are associated with internet use, there is searching for symptoms online. So what happens is that, for example, if I have developed a pain in my stomach or I have developed a pain in my knee, so the first thing that people have started doing is going online and searching for that symptom, but they don't realize that the internet is not going to filter information for them like a professional is going to. And so they become witness to all of this extreme amounts of information that is associated with that one small symptom, and this can lead to a lot of feelings of fear and a lot of distress, because what if I actually really have this? So rather than actually attending to the symptom, rather than attending to that pain, I am going to start focusing on this intense pressure that has been put in my head that maybe I have a really huge disease, and this can become a very huge source of anxiety among people. Nextly, there is the fear of missing out, which we have discussed previously. What happens in this is that the anxiety that we feel because of this fear of missing out on certain important things is also something that is only intensified even when we check our phones, because there is usually something that we are missing out. We can't be everywhere in our lives all the time, and hence there will always be something that we are missing out on, but we don't really understand this, and this loop of anxiety keeps intensifying and it can become very difficult to get out of. Nextly, be very anxiety provoking for a lot of people, because they might wonder too much about what is happening with their information. Plus, in case they do face certain online scams and fraud, it can lead to a lot of hopelessness, because it can also be something that hinders with their financial life, right? So both of these two factors can also lead to a lot of anxiety among people. Coming to the next factor, cyberbullying and cyber stalking, while being associated with a lot of depressive symptoms, it is also initially associated with a lot of anxiety features, because when something like that is happening to us, it is very difficult to cope through it. When somebody is bullying us or trolling us online, it is something that really revolves in our mind 24/7, and it is very difficult to get out of that space. And it is also something that leads to us wondering again and again about when is it that the next person is going to come and say something cruel about us online, right? Nextly, there is the social media comparison. Again, it can lead to just as much anxiety. When we keep comparing ourselves, these constant doubts and these constant questions that come up to us, they can be very difficult to process. It can be very difficult for us to realize that we may not like the person who we really are, and to go through this realization or this insight because of witnessing some other person's life can be very difficult to go through. And lastly, there is the information overload which is associated. whenever we are using any internet site, whenever we are using any social media platform, there is usually a lot of information that actually comes up to our minds. There is a lot of information that we absorb, and this is something that can become a very difficult process, because sometimes information can be too much, and how we are interpreting this information and how we are storing this information or how we are perceiving this information can become a very important part of handling it. Nextly, there is the impact of sleep that we have a lot of the times. What happens is that, especially this particular generation that is ongoing at the moment, we have a tendency of using our mobile phones right before going to the bed. We have this tendency of actually consuming an hour or two and just scrolling on our phones, and that is again a process that is very easy, that is very difficult to discontinue, right? So we keep scrolling on our phones right before bedtime, and we don't realize the huge amount of impact that screen time, that screen of that digital device can have on our bodies. So what happens is that there is this whole process, there is this whole chain of process that starts. So because of the screen, we can have a difficulty in initiating the sleep in the first place. When we have a difficulty in initiating the sleep schedule, it is going to be very difficult for us to actually maintain the quantity of our sleep, because everybody has to get up in the morning eventually to be able to go to their workplace or to their schools, and this results in very shortened amounts of sleep quantity. Nextly, there is also the quality that decreases. So when there is the sleep quantity that starts decreasing, when there is difficulty in initiating sleep or maintaining sleep, our quality of sleep reduces in a way that leads to a lot of daytime fatigue and a lot of sleepiness, because we don't really feel well rested in the morning. We don't really feel as if we have gotten that amount of energy that we lost the previous day, and when we keep functioning on that, like left up amount of energy that we do have from the previous day, because we did not get a good night's sleep. However, when this cycle continues for a very, very long time, that is when the real impact actually starts showing up on our entire bodily processes, that our equilibrium can actually start shifting, our circadian rhythm can start shifting, and that is when it can actually become a problem, because it is very difficult to reshift those shifted tendencies within our physical systems. Lastly, there is the impact of appetite that we often have that internet use often has on our appetites. So what happens is that internet use is usually associated with a lot of sedentary lifestyle, right? So when we are going to be scrolling on our phones, we are probably going to be lying on our sofa or on our bed while we are doing that. We are probably going to be sitting somewhere, and we are going to keep scrolling for long hours, and this is something that leads to very sedentary lifestyles, which can also lead to musculoskeletal issues. Plus, they can lead to a lot of overweight and also the risk of developing obesity, because we are not really engaging in any form of physical exercise, which is important for the body to be able to maintain its own physical health. Nextly, there has also been a research which has stated that for high risk internet users, it is very commonly observed that they have very irregular dietary behaviors, because whenever we are let's say watching a movie, or whenever we are scrolling on our mobile phones, it is very easy for us to keep snacking on something. So even when we are doing it, when we're just sitting casually scrolling through our phones, we are basically going to be eating something alongside, and because of this, we have this tendency to not really have those 3 meals of the day which are actually important. We keep having junk food and we miss out on all the healthy foods, and this can lead to a lot of health problems which should be addressed. Lastly, there is the internet, which through the internet there are a lot of websites which are being promoted. They are particularly known as the Pro Ana and the Pro Mia websites that actually promote the eating disorders of anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa. So they basically advertise that people should be eating and then they should be puking the food that they initially ate to be able to actually maintain a certain body type, and that and this can actually be very, very influencing to the minds of those teenagers who have not really developed a sense of self as of yet, because they can feel that this is the right way to go about things, and they can basically ruin their entire bodily systems or their way of thinking very initially in their lives. Okay. So these are all the concerns that can actually come up, which are related to our mental health due to our engagement in these digital spaces or on these social media platforms. Now, when is it that we should seek help, or when is it that we should realize that we need to identify in case something has been going on? So when you are seeing all of these slides, I would request that you know, go a little bit inside and introspect in case there are any of these mental health concerns that you have experienced even to the slightest amount. And in case the answer comes up as a yes, I would like to ask you to actually ask yourself how much or to what extent is this actually happening, or to what intensity it is actually happening. And for the question that when is it that we should seek help, honestly, we should seek help whenever it is that we are realizing that there is something which is going on which should not be going on. And in case we need a particular timeline, it is when all of these concerns, they start interrupting our functional lives, in case it starts interrupting our daily physical functioning. For example, in case our social media usage starts interfering with our interpersonal relationships, or starts disrupting our occupational life, or starts interfering with our, you know, like daily leisure activities or personal life in general.
Well, these are some of the really important concepts, that we learned from this discussion, and I'm sure that a lot of people out there now know that it is impacting our lives in a big way, though we are not realizing at the moment. And when we were having a discussion prior to this live session, we were talking about setting boundaries,
Right.
which is so very important. You used so many terms like FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
This is something which is impacting teenagers and our adolescents, I would say, in particular, in a big way, because they do not have the complete understanding of life as yet. That maturity is not there, that emotional maturity, I would say, and neither they have the peers who can guide them, because this entire Gen Z is depending a lot on these digital spaces, and there's nobody to guide them, because we are heavily dependent on our gadgets, on this technology, be it for work related purposes or even for our little household chores. So now let's talk about setting boundaries, how important it is, and how one should start. Though you explain, in bits and pieces, like as far as reducing your screen time is concerned, it's like, similar way you started with 1 hour and just reduce it, bit by bit. But when it comes to setting boundaries in terms of using gadgets, as such, or reducing your online shopping spree, or going to a store instead of ordering things online, how do you think we can set these boundaries, especially when there's a lot of pressure, especially when people think that you are so technologically backward that you really can't be in the mainstream? So all these pressures also add on to people, I guess.
Right. Actually, before setting boundaries, we have the process of actually realizing that there is a problem.
Yes.
That there is something which has been happening, that a lot of people are not really able to actually witness their own experience, because they are not able to introspect their own actions, because all of the time that we have for introspection, it is actually going into using the internet, right? So the first thing that we must do is try to see our behaviors and try to assess our own behaviors on a very personal or on a very individual level. And once we are able to realize that maybe my screen time is a lot higher than what it should be, or maybe it has started affecting my mental health, maybe the way that I am interplaying with my entire social media, that is when we need to realize that there is a certain problem happening. And once we do realize that, it is important to try and seek professional help, or to consult with a professional, or to even if it's not something which you are very open to, I think that you must go to your interpersonal relationships who might be able to support you with this entire process. However, this entire discussion on how to manage these mental health concerns which are actually coming up, this is going to be addressed in detail in tomorrow's session.
Right. Yeah. And you just mentioned that it's very important, first of all, to accept, to acknowledge, and then look at the problem and then go for the solution. But in general, what happens that even if we want to sit with ourselves, we want to introspect, we really don't know how to do it because our mind is so preoccupied. As I said, we always have this fear of missing out on something or the other. We always have this fear of comparing ourselves to others, and then there is literally nobody. How do you think, because these days when we're talking about mental health a lot and we're trying to incorporate all these concepts in a curriculum as well, new education policy or national education policy is also playing a very important role when it comes to teaching the students. Actually they are molding students to learn in a totally different format now.
Yeah.
So how do you think teachers, academicians, their guides and counselors, even parents can play an important role when it comes to teaching their students or words about mental well-being or utilizing digital spaces in a very refined manner?
I think everybody around us can play a very, very important role in this entire process. Everybody who has access to our behaviors, right? So for example, if let's say we start talking about teachers, we know that teachers are actually witnessing these students every day, right? So for example, if there is a student who's falling asleep every day during class, there must be something which is going on. So maybe they can actually ask questions about that thing, that what is it that is making you feel so sleepy during the daytime, right? Or when it comes to parents are even more aware of what is happening in their kids' lives, right? So maybe being a little bit more interactive with the students, with the children about it, that what is it that you are really experiencing, or basically having just opening this line of communication. I feel that is something which is lacking, right? Even with the parents, even with the teachers, because the children feel scared that once I'm going to open about this one thing, they are going to start putting a lot of barriers on, let's say, my screen time, or let's say everything that I'm using on social media. And due to that scare of being blocked in, right, children don't really come up with their concerns, right? So rather than actually trying to fix them up in this particular jar, that this is the only thing that you should stay inside, we should actually explore the real solutions to this. Because even if for 5 days they don't really use their digital device, on the 6th day they just might, right? If they don't use their own phones, they can use their friend's phone, right? So we actually need to start focusing on real solutions to this rather than having these temporary solutions that we are currently relying on.
Absolutely. So you mean to say that we can go for digital detoxification, every once in a while, once a week, or, few hours every day, we can do that. And last but not the least, I would like to ask you a very simple question that, after COVID or during COVID, we had to rely heavily on internet and gadgets because education needs to be continued and everything else needs to be continued. But how do you think that, now that things are back to normal, we can set boundaries or we can use our resources very efficiently so as not to impact our physical health and mental well-being? How we can make good use of digital spaces? Because earlier, during I would say, like during earlier days, what we used to do, we used to research a lot on something, we used to read a lot of books, and now people are losing the habit of reading. Holding a book in the hand has a different kind of sensory pleasure altogether, I would say, than just going to Kindle or reading books online, and people don't even sit for that long. So you're talking about mental well-being, we're talking about physical health, we're talking about reducing screen time, and we are heavily dependent on the same also. So how do you think we can use it efficiently? In short, the message to students basically.
I don't think this message can be in short, because it's more of a systemic problem that it is an individual problem. Because once all of these corporates and all of these companies have realized that so much of the work can be done online without having a physical space to work in, because that takes a lot of money on its own. Once they have realized that there is another way of actually promoting their businesses, they are forcing so many employees to work overtime without really giving them the pay, right? There are so many online assignments which are happening nowadays, and they're compulsory. The children can do really nothing about it. There are so many workshops that they are being able to, that they have to attend online,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
So until we actually make that change in our systems, I don't know what the children or the professionals can really do about it, because if they're forced to do it, they'll have to do it.
Yeah, because we need to go back to basics. As you know,
Yeah.
these days everybody's a guru giving gyan
Yeah.
on maintaining your mental health and having that calmness and reducing anxiety and stress and keeping them at bay. So yes, it's a topic that needs even more time and more discussion, and of course some practical solutions are definitely there right in front of us. We just need to be a little more aware and updated of what we are doing and what we are realizing and what we are going through. It's about introspection also. So thank you so much, Miss Yashrita, for this wonderful discussion and for sharing those insights with us. It was a very, I would say, fruitful discussion. We learned a lot about using digital spaces and mental health and mental well-being. This is something which we all somewhere know, but we're not implementing it. We need to implement it. We have the facts in front of us. It's just that we need to apply, and we need to be a little conscious about the way we are living our lives these days. And now, before I wrap up this session, it's very important for me to tell you about the certification part of it, registration, assessment and everything. So let's go back to our website. This is our homepage of ciet.ncert.gov.in. On this home page, you can see different options out there. Go to the activities section, and under the activities section, you will find some of the options. You'll find options like workshops and training. Yes, this is the option I was talking about, workshop and training. Click on that. When you click on this particular option, you will find here what we are doing at the moment, and this is all about the online training on digital wellness. Click on this particular link, and here we find this very important page which contains all the information regarding our ongoing theme, the umbrella theme of digital wellness. Here, as I told you in the beginning, it's a 5-day, 5-hour training program. So day 1 was all about digital wellness and overview. Of course, we introduced the theme to you all. On second day, we were talking about factors that impact digital wellness. Third day was all about ensuring physical well-being in digital spaces. And on fourth day, that is today, we talked about mental health concerns in digital spaces. And last day will be about ensuring mental well-being in digital spaces. Now, this is a very important concept. You can read all about it here. These discussions and these videos are uploaded on our YouTube channel also. So you can definitely watch them. You can also participate in this particular online training program. As I said, it's not just about learning the tricks of the trade, but also applying. So here you can learn about the objectives of the training, and scrolling down a little bit, you will find the program schedule here. Yes, so this is our program schedule, and you can see this program schedule with all the details, the expert's name and everything. Now, you scroll down a bit more, and you will see that there are going to be few options. There is an option of registering yourself on the website, and there is an option of how you can take the assessment test. There is going to be a QR code that's given there. You can scan the QR code. You can register yourself for this particular training program. Also, you need to go through all the videos that are there, so that while you attempt the quiz or while you go for the assessment, you have all the answers ready. And once you are ready, with those answers, you can definitely think about attempting the assessment and getting a certificate for the same. So this is the QR code which I was talking about. You can participate in it using the same. Then go for the live sessions, just watch them. They're already there on YouTube, and take up the online course. And these are the different things, I would say different guidelines that you need to keep in mind while going for the course. And last but not the least, you can submit your feedback regarding the training session, what you liked, what you didn't like, what else you want us to prepare for you, what else you want to see. So this is the feedback form that you need to fill. You can scan this QR code, or you can write to us on training.helpdesk@ciet.nic.in. That's our email ID. This is for feedback, for your suggestions, or for any other query. Also, we keep on giving you a phone number. Then definitely we have a YouTube live streaming platform for all, for you as well. That is NCERT official. This is our channel. We are getting a lot of messages. Of course, you guys are marking your attendance, but more than marking your attendance, it is important to raise questions, to raise concern, rather voice your concerns. And this is a brilliant opportunity where we talk we can talk more about it, and we can participate in this healthy discussion where we will get to know your experiences and your point of views. And of course, expert is here to help you out with all those queries and questions that you have in your mind at the moment. Now it's time for me to wrap up this wonderful session over here, but don't go anywhere, because in a while you will watch another interesting session of ours, that's Sahyog. So this is me, Harpreet Kaur, taking leave of you for the moment, but you stay tuned for more educational programs on our channel. Namaskar.